Oh yeah, welcome back into the basement again, everybody. Basement Bar Sports with the fourth in Uncensored podcast. My name is Adam. I'll be hanging out with you for this one. We have some college football news to talk about. It may be off season, but it's never really truly the off season. So we got some things to talk about. Some of the things we'll be covering today. We do have new clock rules and changes that the NCAA College Football Rules Committee have put out. So we'll be talking about those today. What kind of impact that's going to have on the game, whether it's going to make it quicker, better, those kinds of things. We got the Big 12 going after a few other schools from the Pac-12. What impact that's going to have on both conferences. This is the last year of the 14 playoff. So what is that going to bring us in 2024? Are we going to see a lot more competition? Are we going to see a lot more guys playing in these games instead of sitting out and waiting for the draft? Things of that nature. Also, we got to touch on Nick Saban crying about his upcoming schedule in 24 and beyond. Really, the whole SEC has been nothing but patty cake games for the most part. They get, 3 hard games a year. They don't play anybody good in their conference, it seems like, for the top tiers, Alabama, Georgia. So we'll get into that as well. So we'll be hanging out for a little while here, guys, and again, we always welcome any feedback that you guys want to give us about the show and about what we're doing, things that we can improve on, make it better. So let's dive right in. Let's go with the College Football Rules Committee announcing officially that they approved the clock changes for this upcoming year. So basically, no untimed downs at the end of the first and third quarters. Just a smaller one there. Ban on using consecutive timeouts, so they're no longer allowed to use 2 or 3 timeouts, whatever it may be, to ice a kicker at the end of the game. You can use one, and that is it. But the biggest one is the clock no longer no longer stops after a first down. College football was a little bit different than the NFL, so basically, after a first down, clock would stop, and it wouldn't go until everybody was set, and the ref blew the whistle. But now the clock will be continuous, and that'll keep going. So, really, I think this will help the speed of the game, and it kind of normalizes everything across the board to the NFL, of course. But it also is going to make a pretty big impact on what the coaches are doing in some of their changes. Now, this doesn't affect within the 2 minutes. So, the last 2 minutes of the second and fourth quarter, it doesn't affect those. So, these rule changes are pretty much through the whole thing, but it'll still stop at the within the 2 minutes. It'll still stop on a first down then. So, the impact is going to be definitely on the coaching changes, I think. I think it'll help the speed of the game. I think the average last year was around 3 hours and 36 minutes for a college football game. So they're trying to get it down a little bit from that. But, I mean, really, the TV stations aren't going to like it necessarily because that's more ad revenue that they can put in on those games that are, the longer they are, the more ad revenue they're going to get. So it might affect that part just a tad, but as a whole, for us as college football fans, I think it's going to be a good thing going forward. So, that's one of the big things that are going to be coming up and changing, along with the last year of the 14 playoff. So we have, and if you check out the Facebook page, we did put a post up. Who are your 4 that are going to be in this year? Mine was a little crazy, but I went with Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and USC, and I am aware that 3 of those teams play each other in one way, shape, or form. Ohio State and Notre Dame play each other. USC and Notre Dame plays each other as well. But I think that all of those games are going to be very competitive this year. We have good teams coming back. There are some quarterback issues at all three schools, all four actually, with Georgia as well, since Stetson Bennett won't be there. C.J. Stroud not at Ohio State. Caleb Williams obviously not with USC. And a new quarterback coming in for Notre Dame with Sam Howell. But however, we kind of know what Sam Howell's about. We've seen him at Wake, see what he can do, and now he's going to have a higher level of talent to be able to throw to. So I really do think that we're going to see a better Notre Dame than we saw last year with their quarterback situation last year. I think we're going to see a much better product on the field from Notre Dame. So I think those are my four that could be in. It remains to be seen, obviously. So, but again, this year coming up, Georgia has considered one of the easiest schedules in the country. So I do think Georgia can make it back. We'll see what Alabama does in the SEC. See if any of the other teams can come up. Tennessee was a welcome sight in the SEC last year till Hooker got hurt, and basically they kind of went downhill after that. But watching them beat Alabama was fantastic. And them Tennessee fans got with it with throwing the goalposts in the river. So last year, the 4-team playoff, I'm excited for the 12-team playoff. I think it opens up other conferences as well. Not just, you're really looking at the SEC, Big Ten. Big 12 might be able to, sneak in here and there. But Oklahoma and Texas moving to the SEC. Then you have USC and UCLA moving to the Big Ten. And that brings me to my next one with the Big 12 going after Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. It makes sense for those schools, for them, because it leaves Arizona and Arizona State. It gets that rivalry stays. And then bringing Utah in, BYU's already coming to the Big 12. Utah, BYU would be reunited for their matchup as well in the Big 12. It does leave the Pac-12 with pretty much nobody at that point. You have Oregon, Washington, and Washington State, depending on the year. Stanford has been down lately, so they need to look at maybe getting some schools in there. I know like Fresno State was a thought, and some of the other, they're not big draw teams, however. So with UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten, that's a big punch for the Pac-12. And if these four teams end up going, then there you go. That's it. And Colorado used to be a part of the Big 12. So going back to the Big 12 isn't a big thing. Plus there's the Dion factor now with him coaching the Colorado Buffaloes. So I think that may have a little bit of an impact on that as well. So we'll see if he can turn that program around. I think it's fun to kind of see the antics and the things that have gone on since he's taken over the program. So it's going to be a challenge, though. They've been down for a lot of years. They were kind of competitive back in the Cordell Stewart days, dating myself a little bit. But, maybe he can get him back to prominence. I know he took some of the guys from Jackson State with him. The number one overall prospect last year at cornerback went with him. So his son went with him too. So he's got some pieces that he already knows and knows how to work in, and we'll see what they can do. Do I think they're going to be super competitive this year? No, I don't. He's going to have to get some recruiting under his belt there as well for the next couple of years, depending on how the transfer portal works for him as well. It's free agency for college football at this point, and still don't like it. I really do believe that, sitting behind some of these guys that they're sitting behind, no matter if you're a 4 or 5, 3, 2-star recruit, doesn't matter. If you're sitting behind a good starter, you're going to learn a lot from that person. And you're also going to learn a lot from the coaches. And you're at a prominent school. it should make you bust your ass harder to get on the field. That's my opinion. So I'm not a big fan of the transfer portal, never have been, but it is there. It's rearing its head all over the place. So we got Sam Howell, like I said, going to Notre Dame, and some of the other teams that get people from. I mean, USC basically pillaged Oklahoma when Coach left and Caleb Williams came over. Addison came from Pitt. So there's definitely some fun in it as well, I guess you could say, just because some teams that may not be great one year can really hit it in the transfer portal and in recruiting, and there they are. They're back in the race and they're back in the running. But it remains to be seen. I haven't seen it completely turn a program around necessarily. I mean, some of these teams already had great talent there. USC already had great talent. Notre Dame already has great talent. Some of these other ones that they go to already have great talent. So it's not like they're completely turning around a team just because of the transfer portal. It still, to me, is kind of like whining, requesting to be traded, essentially, like some of the NFL and NBA players do. Bust your chops, do your job, and it'll happen. To quote Barkley a little bit, Charles Barkley, when he said, the steelworkers don't want to have to go to work, but they still do it every day when it comes to load minutes for the NBA, and I completely agree with him. So all that kind of ties in. I think we're in a spot right now as a society and as a world where we're rewarding that kind of behavior. So we are where we are. However, some of the impacts of the teams moving, kind of getting back on track here. So the Pac-12 really hasn't had much of a chance in the last few years. They shoot themselves in the foot. Oregon will have a good year. USC has a good year. But then they shoot themselves in the foot late in the year, lose to a team that they shouldn't lose to, and then they're just kind of forgotten about when it comes to the playoffs. So having a 12-team playoff, you got some of those Pac-12 teams, Oregon, Washington, that can possibly sneak in. Same with the Big 12. They beat themselves up pretty good. This past year was a prime example of that one. They just absolutely were annihilating each other back and forth all through. TCU had a great run, but boy, did they really shit the bed in the national championship game. I was really hoping for a much better performance out of them and a much better game to watch, because that was terrible. It was an awful game to watch. It really wasn't fun. I'm pretty sure I turned it off after the midway through the second quarter. I was over it and didn't want to watch anymore. So I'm hoping that this breeds a little bit more competitiveness when we do get to the 12 team rather than the 4 team. We get some teams that you don't know. You just don't know. Those top 12 teams, man, anybody could beat anybody on any given day, especially when you have a month or so to prepare. It'll be a little bit less with the 12-team playoff, but even still, it's not like a regular week. You're still going to have 2.5, 3 weeks, roughly, depending on how they structure everything, in order to prepare for that first playoff game. So it's still going to be important to be in your top 4 because of the buys that the top 4s get. It's going to be important to be as high of a seed as you can be. So I think that it can breed competitiveness because you get a home game for the first one if you're the higher seed. So I do think that in itself is going to breed a little bit more competitiveness, and I really do hope that it keeps some guys from opting out and waiting to go for the combine and for the NFL. I really do really hope that's something that happens. So the other thing that I definitely want to talk about, because I think it's hilarious, is Nick Saban complaining about the competition that he's going to have to face upcoming. So He already has Auburn and Tennessee every year. Now he's going to get LSU every year. So he is freaking out, saying that it's unfair, blah, 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 blah. Play football, man. You guys get patty cakes. The Walmart Walruses or whoever it is that you play, some of these F2, F48 schools, whatever it is, FCS teams. I mean, come on. Just play good competition. Make the game good. And you get games like you had with Tennessee this year and Alabama. Great game. Watching that game, I was on the edge of my seat, and I'm not an SEC fan whatsoever. But watching that game, man, just back and forth. Who's going to get the last one? Tennessee gets that field goal. It was the ugliest game-winning field goal I've ever seen in my life, but man, was that a fun game to watch. And to watch Alabama go down was probably the funnest part of said game. So, just stop complaining. I mean, nobody cares. Nobody cares that you're complaining about having competition. Just because you want to be at the top every year, I think you got to earn it. You got to work for it. And, Georgia, they didn't get exposed this year. They were as good of a team, but, when you're watching through the season, you're seeing people play patty cakes. I mean, they should have absolutely rolled through Kent State. Kent State hung around for 3.5 quarters, but when they got to the national championship, they did their work. They played their best game. TCU pretty much played their worst. So, any given Saturday, Monday on the national championship game, but any given day, man, you never know with these college football teams. So it's always good competition. That's why I like it much, much, much more than the NFL. However, the USFL and the XFL have been pretty entertaining. But nonetheless, college football is steeped in tradition, steeped in fanfare. I mean, there's diehards everywhere. You can't, I'm an Ohio State fan, clearly, and I can't walk through an airport or a city outside of Ohio without hearing an OH from somebody. And it is a national brand with college football, and it's one of the greatest games that is played, hands down. So, first episode back, guys. We ain't got a whole lot to talk about. Other than that, right now we got the spring games coming up here soon. So those are going to be good to look at. We're going to be able to see some of these quarterback battles that we have with some of the teams that have lost people. Is Kyle McCord going to be the quarterback for Ohio State? I don't know if that's a given, considering who Hall has come in. USC, who's going to be their quarterback? We're pretty sure Notre Dame doesn't have a quarterback controversy. Sam Howell should be the starter. But some of these other teams that lost good quarterbacks, Bryce Young leaving Alabama, Will Levis leaving Kentucky, Anthony Richardson in Florida. So a lot of interesting things going on in the quarterback areas. There's quite a few good ones in the draft this year. So we'll see how teams are able to retool in this last year of the 14 playoff, and we'll see who gets there. The good thing is a lot of those teams have good pieces that they're bringing back and working around, so they get a good quarterback in there, they're going to be just fine. So, all right, folks. Well, I think that's going to be it for me tonight, but join us again in 2 weeks. We're going to be back every 2 weeks in the off seasons, every week during the college football season, our favorite time of year. I can sniff it. I can smell it. It's right down the road. We're going to be back to college football before we know it. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching and listening. I'm out. Peace.